Hey, today I want to show you how you can manage the context window in AI SDK. And what I mean by managing the context is that as your conversation grows with AI, the whole problem is that the longer the context window in your conversation, the worse the response from your AI gets. And so I want to show you a few tips that you can implement into your chats and your assistants to make sure that as your conversation grows, you are not getting worse results. And that's probably the biggest challenge that you will face when working with AI is to what to give to AI to get the best results. And over time, as you work with AI, you will notice that the shorter the context that you give to AI to execute the task, the results tends to be better. And that's the whole purpose of this video, is to show you how you can keep growing the conversation without losing the quality of the responses, if that makes sense. Let's first understand how messages work. So this is our conversation. We have our system message, so basically instructions what AI should do. And we have our user message, in our case, how to improve sleep. And it has like a few tools that it can call. And those tools actually will be in the system message as well. So in our case, it calls the web search tool. And when I'm saying calling the tool, what it actually does is just saying, here's the tool, please execute it. And after AI handed us this tool with inputs, what we're gonna do is that we're gonna execute this function with those inputs. And we're gonna give this result of the function back to AI, and it will execute the whole context once again. That was like a problem for me to understand it in some sense, because I thought it would just continue the conversation with just the next message, like so, it will just run this message, right? But what it actually does, it reruns the whole thing, and it feels like AI wakes up with the whole context and it needs to decide what to do next every time as you add more and more messages. With each message, it just wakes up with the new context and it needs to decide what to do with it. And in our case, we executed the web search function, which means that it will probably be a long text with all the results, URLs, and stuff like this. Okay, we append this tool result. After that, AI continues to run, and then based on that result, it will actually answer the user's query. In our case, it's how to improve sleep, right? The problem is that as your conversation grows and you get more and more of those tool results in your context window, it will blow up the whole context window, and you will start getting like more and more hallucinations as the context windows grow. And the most straightforward way of dealing with this is to just remove first messages as your conversation grows. Maybe those first messages aren't even relevant anymore to the conversation, or you can summarize them. And so let me show you how you can do it. Let's just imagine that it is our agent that will run a lot of tools, and I don't have any tools here, but let's just imagine it. And as our conversation grows, we will just put all those messages to AI, which will blow up the whole context window at some point, right? Even if it's like 1 million or 2 million tokens context window, it still will happen eventually, right? So what we can do here, we can just see if, for example, message length, so the total count, the total number of messages is equal to 10, then what we're going to do is to create a summary of the whole conversation to this point. So let's say here we have 10 messages. We're going to create a summary based on those messages. Then we're going to remove 10 messages from the context, in our case, from the array, and just push this summary message into the conversation as a system or like assistant message. That's probably the easiest thing that you can do to make sure that you won't blow up the whole context window. Another thing that you maybe don't even want to summarize the whole conversation, you can just remove first 10 messages, and for most cases it will work just fine. So you can do it in this kind of barbaric kind of way where you just remove first 10 messages and you don't even care what was in those messages, or you can summarize and it will work just fine as well. But also you can do, not that long ago, the SDK also showed or implemented a function called prune messages. And what we can do, let's name this pruned messages. And what it allows us to do is to provide messages into this function. We have messages. It needs to be a model message, not the UI message. So we are converting our messages. In our case, they're already like sliced, and we have only like 10 messages in our context. And so what this function allows you to do is to prune messages, it says in the function. But what it allows you to prune is to prune, for example, empty messages. So you can decide whether or not you want to keep empty messages. Let's remove them, for example. Also, you have ability to remove reasoning, and you have multiple choices here. You can remove all reasoning. So if you're using a reasoning model, what your AI will do is have like a reasoning tokens in front of each assistant message. And again, they might not be relevant to the conversation at this point. For example, like reasoning for this tool call, it won't be relevant for your like 10th tool call, right? And what it allows us to do is to actually remove this reasoning from your conversation. All you can like remove before last message, and what it allows you to do is to just remove all the reasoning that was before the last message. And also you can do here, you can specify, for example, before last 4 messages. I'm not sure actually, is it working for reasoning or it's only for tool calls? Let me see. No, it should work. Let's try to figure this out. Let's try with tool calls. So, okay, let's skip that first for now. You can also do this for tool calls as well. The exact same thing. You can remove all the tool calls, or you can before the last message. And here you should be able to specify like before 5 messages. Yes, it works for tool calls, but for some reason doesn't work for reasoning, but it's okay. So yeah, you can specify that you want to remove all the tool calls and all the tool results from the 5 messages, not from the 5 messages, but before the last 5 messages. And this way you can just use this pruned messages in your conversation, and it will remove all the useless stuff from your conversation as well. Another thing that AI SDK allows you to do is to actually interfere in between steps. So, as I said, AI doesn't call tools, it just provides you the input and that it needs to call a tool, and you decide what to do with it. And actually, we have a function to interfere in between steps here. It's called prepare step. Prepare step. Here's how to use it. All we need to do here, call prepare step, and we'll get our step. Return step. Let's count how many times I'm going to say step. So what we have in our steps, we have messages, we have model, we have step number. So based on, for example, step, we can see if, for example, AI has called a web search tool for the next iteration, for the next step. We want to, for example, change the model, and we can easily do that. We can just return model and provide some other model for this iteration. You can also manage active tools, so which tools AI is going to have for the next step as well. And here you can just specify which tools is going to have, right? This should be an array. Oh, right, yeah, it should be an array of the names of your tools, basically here. And also, again, messages. You can decide, maybe choose a different system message for the next iteration. If, for example, AI called some tool and for the next step you need some other system message. When we're doing this, we're getting into territory of workflows. That's the whole other topic. But you can, it's very flexible with the SDK. You can do all kind of stuff with agentic flows. You can also decide tool choice, so you can decide that it has to call this tool after it called this tool. So here we can get our tool, and based on the name of the tool, we can decide whether or not we want to do some other branch of logic, right? So that's that. You can also manage your context through prepare step in between like tool calls. And you can, for example, again, in the exact same way, for example, redact some of the messages from your context for particular step to not waste tokens. and not waste intelligence on larger context window. If that makes sense. And you can go even further. And for example, if your agent has many tools, like 50 plus tools, you don't want to have all those tools at once in your conversation, in your context window, because as I said, intelligence will go down as your conversation grows. What you can do instead is to use a library, for example, like, let me show you, SDK tools. This guy is doing like God's work with the whole ecosystem of AI SDK and TypeScript AI stuff. So here, let me show you, we have, I don't remember, to be honest, maybe it's not even this, but you can do a semantic search on your tool. So for example, AI will call a search tool to find tools and will search on keywords. And based on those keywords, you will find tools and give it back to AI. And so AI has to search for tools, and it will allow you to have smaller conversation, smaller context window, right? But it also comes with problems. So if you haven't seen this, please go and explore this. I'm gonna leave a link in the description for AI SDK tools. You can walk through it and see like memory implementation, also store. Dev tools are amazing. So yeah, the whole idea is that you can also create a search for your tools and not expose all tools at once to your agent, right? So that's all I wanted to share. If you have any other tips about context engineering and context management, please let me know. I'm really like digging into it right now and exploring it more and more. But if you found this helpful, let me know in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one.